I know. So many questions. You've come here for a Mark II Transit, a supercharged V6, and that's not a Mark II Transit. It is, in fact, my my side quest, as they say these days. It is a Mark II Escort. And the other questions are, where have you been? What have you done? I've got a few confessions to make. I've run into problems, but I've overcome them. Episode 3, this episode was supposed to be about exhaust system I was using on I am using on the Mark II Transit with the Cosworth V6, and also about the cooling, but I've had to improvise and sidetrack to take into account the current situation. There is good news for this episode. So we've got fuel systems, we've got fuel injectors. I'll talk you through my side quest, and we'll have a good time. So, welcome back. I mentioned that this episode was called Distraction and Delegation, and the delegation bit is quite relevant to this next bit. So I don't know about you, but life isn't like the influencers make out. I don't get up at 3:30 after 2 hours sleep, get in an ice bath filled with all the essential oils and have my double espresso decaffeinated with some vegan spinach dropped in. It doesn't work like that. You've got family, you've got work, and your hobby comes second or third. It's just the realities of life, and sometimes you only have 1 or 2 hours per week. And if you've got a project, I would recommend restoration project similar to this. Don't think, right, I'm going to take a week off work this year and do the project. Try and make some progress, even if it's 1 or 2 hours a week, because some progress is better than no progress. I've found from previous experience that if you let a project stagnate, it will indeed stagnate and it will sit still. I think this is why a lot of restorations don't get completed. But if you do keep a little bit of momentum up, just making that 1 or 2 hours a week, things sometimes start to snowball. You get to a certain stage where things snowball. Anyway, I'm digressing. Delegation, right, first thing, fuel tank. I have to kick myself here. I was going to do make my own fuel tank. So this Transit, as standard, has got a ridiculously small 8-gallon fuel tank. It's in a bit of a state. I'll show you in a minute. And I was going to make my own fuel tank, and to kick myself and stop myself. And I thought, no, that is best left to professionals for a number of reasons. So I've got in contact with a company called Comp Brake, British company. They do some really fantastic things. Products, calipers, brake systems, etc. One of the other things they do are fuel tanks. Now they've got off-the-shelf fuel tanks, but I approached them and spoke to a chap called Clint Turner, Mr. Turner, who's head of sales at Comp Brake, and he really helped me out. So I'll show you the result of that assistance, and I'm hoping to make that fuel tank available to other people. We're early stages yet, but I'll show you what I mean. The other thing I was going to do, again, I thought it made good YouTube. I had a set of injectors, 2 sets of injectors actually for this fan, and I thought I need to test them. Why don't I make a fuel injection test rig? And I started it, and then again I stopped myself. I thought, time is limited, time is precious. What are you doing, Matt? There are professionals. So I approached a company called Mr. Injector UK. He has been brilliant. Again, I'll show you the results of that, and I'm hoping you can benefit from my very positive experience there. So there we go, delegation. Let's see the results. So it's October 2024, and if we look at the van since, when was the last time I did an episode? It was a few months ago, sinfully long time. Not much appears to have changed, externally anyway. Sharp eye amongst you will notice, and I'm really pleased with this, my front cover is complete. So this was the sight glass. Last episode it was covered with green tape, and you can see the internals there in their oil. I love this paint. I don't know about you. Tell me what you think. But it's a crinkle finish paint by VHT. It takes a bit of practice to get used to, but the reason why there doesn't seem to be many changes is because I've had to rebuild the supercharger after problems I discovered, and that's going to be next episode. I'm not going to dwell too much, but suffice to say, I am making progress. It's just slow progress. Changed these springs as well, did a recalculation, so they will come up. They'll compress more, so that this plate, blow-off plate, will lift more at the desired PSI. And the other thing the sharp-eyed people amongst you might notice is this. Last episode I had a cheeky bit of white tape hiding that. If I go to the side, you might see what I've used as my belt tensioner arm is in fact a conrod. It's not finished yet, so I need to do this, but the this idler tensioner is, I think, from a Ford Ranger. I've got the same one there, doubled up, so I can carry a spare as well. But the arm itself, holding it out, and I'm all about repurposing it. That's from a Subaru Impreza, and I've designed this cover specifically with this in place. We've got 3 grub screws which are going to lock it in place. So if I move it out there, I didn't want to put that in the first episode because things like that make some people angry, but I don't care. I'm all about upcycling and improvising, and I just like it. So in fact, what we're looking at here is a V6 that's using 7 conrods. V6 using 7 conrods, mind-blowing, I know. And the other thing that's taken some time, again, the sharp-eyed of you might notice, I've got little splodges of filler at the back, but this was a really perforated bulkhead, if you remember from previous episodes, and I've been working hard to repair that and match up the contours. So we've got patches here and here. I don't know why really I spent so much time matching contours, but if I can make it look original, I will. I think I've said that before. Essentially, the heater bubble goes over this, and all my work with smoothing it and making it look good is going to be covered up anyway. But I'm quite pleased with that. I know it doesn't look pretty with these little skims of filler here, but once it's sanded down and primed, it will look mint. I'll do a little montage. I think I recorded some clips of that repair on the bulkhead, so let's see how that goes. So, we're about a quarter way through. It's not my best welding day, but I'm quite happy with it. I'm quite pleased. There's a contour line here. I've got that to match up. The heater bubble will go over this, so most of this will be hidden anyway, but I don't tend to grind the welds completely flat, so proud by about maybe 1/2 mil. A skim of filler to finish. I just prefer a little bit of strength rather than grinding it all the strength out. So depressingly, there's 2 patches here. It has taken me 4 hours.
makes me feel so high. Lately I have realized so high, so high, so
Right, this is a standard fuel tank for a Mark II Transit. They did come with a couple of varieties. I think there's a slightly bigger version than this, but this is about 8 gallons. I think it's standard for the short wheelbase, and as you can see, it is a bit of a state. It didn't leak, but I don't think it's far off from being pinholed. The other thing I didn't want is, bearing in mind my supercharged V6 probably a bit thirstier than the standard 2 litre. I didn't want to get range anxiety with just 8 gallons. That's best left to the Teslas. So I thought I needed something else. So my first thought was, well, let's repurpose something from another car. Now, I'm going fuel injection. This is a fuel tank from a Lotus Elise. Yeah, so straight away you're thinking, well, that's not particularly well known for its large fuel tank. The fuel tank's the same size. However, it's a nice unit, stainless steel. Fuel injection pump is already there. And I thought it was going to be a quick and easy shortcut. However, it's too deep for me, for my liking. It would probably go under the tank, but this depth, it would protrude about 3 inches more than the standard tank. In fact, if I go down, you can probably see the height difference. I didn't like it, so I changed my mind. So here it is. This is the new Mark II Transit fuel tank I designed, and it's made by Comp-Brake, that fantastic company I mentioned. You can see immediately that it's larger. So I remember the original being 8 gallons. This one is 14.5 gallons. Depth wise, it's not much deeper. Hopefully you can see that. I've designed it to be 17 centimeters from here to here, so it fits. I think it will fit on other vans as well. So the intention is, if that'll be towards the front of the van, this will be towards the rear. You can see the filler point is in a very similar location, and this could be used as in carburetor applications or injection. So we've got a pickup pipe, we've got a return, which if you're using as a carburetor version, you could just blank it off, and you've got the breather. So one thing I did with this is, essentially, although I designed the outside, I deferred to them as far as the internal. So I pointed out that it's a large flat area. It's going to be a heavier tank when it's full, obviously, but it may be subject to bowing. So this tank has got internal baffles partitions that make it exceptionally strong, and stop that fuel moving away from the pickup pipe. At the moment, we've just talked about making this available to other people. It's early stages yet, but I'm hoping if this can help other people out, that we can get this for, available for under £300. Now, to put that in perspective, you can get these in new old stock, but I've seen them turn up for between £250 and £300. So if you can have an alternative with a much bigger capacity, remember 14.5 gallons is a big improvement, that should do. So I need to speak to Clint Turner about that. He did mention some money going to me, in recognition of the design work I put into it. However, I can't accept money. One of the stipulations of my day job is that I don't accept money from outside sources. So my feeling is £10 a tank might go, or sorry, £10 of that price might go to a charity of my designation. It's something I haven't mentioned to Clint, but hopefully we can make that work. So it'll be a long range fuel tank for Mark 1, Mark 2 Transits, and probably other vans as well. And if you decide to go with Comp-Break and my design, £10 of your money will also go to a worthy charity. To be confirmed though, still work in progress. But yep, great company. Check out Comp-Break. They've got loads of good stuff. They're not paying me, by the way, anything. So there we go. Oh, almost forgot dimensions. In case you are eyeing this up and thinking, oh, actually that could work for mine. So it is 17 centimeters in height. Across this way, so the width is 55 centimeters, and then the length front to back 70 centimeters, and you've got the fuel level sensor there. That's all included, and there is an option to get them powder coated black as well if you so choose. So that's a fuel tank. If it's something that appeals to you, you think actually that might be worthwhile, just drop me a comment below and say, actually Matt, I could do that on my project, and that might help kickstart things. And like I say, I won't make any money from it, but if I can help you out, that's a good thing. So the next bit of delegation is the fuel injectors. Right, let me show you my test rig. I'm gonna flip the camera, see if this. Yeah, I'm not great with cameras and IT. Right, so this was my aborted test rig. You see I've got a backing board. This is a fuel rail from a Volvo T6, the sort of 2004 era T6. And you can see the measuring cylinders. It's got 6 measuring cylinders that are going to go along here. And the intention was fuel pump, oscilloscope, 12-volt battery, and essentially I could test the flow of the injectors against each other and get a balance set. That's when I stopped myself because time is precious, and delegated. So I had 2 lots of Volvo T6 injectors. Now these can flow, for the 6 of them, over 350 horsepower. If you remember, my supercharged V6 is intended to produce about 270 horsepower. Interesting thing with fueling with supercharged engines, if you've got a 270 horsepower supercharged engine, you would have to fuel it for more than 270. You have to fuel it for, let's say, about 300 horsepower. And the reason why is because of the parasitic losses, you need power to drive the supercharger. So although overall your net output might be 270, you have to fuel for, let's say, 300 horsepower to cope with the losses for the supercharger, which is something that some people forget. Anyway, I digress. Here we go. Injectors are 2 lots of Volvo T6 injectors from eBay. I think they were about 30 quid or something ridiculous. I thought it was cheap, and it is cheap. However, with the second-hand parts, as I mentioned, it comes a risk. And this part was something I didn't want to risk. I didn't want a risk of one injector spelling doom for my whole project. These were sent to a very helpful chap called Mr. Injector UK. That's not his real name. I'm sure it's not on his birth certificate, but there's his details. And he's a really busy man, extremely talented and helpful. And I basically gave him the task of reconditioning 7 injectors. I wanted a 7th as a sort of spare, one that I knew was good. And also, if I do bring that test rig back to life, I'll have a control, which is that one there. But anyway, he reconditioned 7, tested them, balanced them. The total price, I'll be completely transparent, so you know. You can see there, £198.78 for 7. On top of that, you get a report. So this is a report. You can see the increase in flow. You can see the balance and sort of visual spray. So as well as the flow rate as a number, he can look at and use his expertise to see what it was before and then what it was after. So it's not just how it flows, it's to do, or how much it's flowing, it's how it's spraying. So I think that's a good point. Now, I realise that I'm building a relatively bespoke engine, but it occurs to me that whether you've got a high power project or a humdrum sort of family mover car, it's probably worth considering getting your injectors sorted out after 100,000 miles, or if as a part of a major service, especially the price of fuel. You know what it's like. So yeah, consider it. And any issues, he's a really good guy, very helpful, and he's done a superb job with these. Right, this next part, distraction. I'm in two minds about this one. Tell me what you think. So I wanted, obviously, the channel to be about my supercharged fan. And a lot of my friends who watched it said, Matt, why didn't you mention your Escort? You put so much effort into it. There are so many people doing Mark II Escort videos. It is definitely part of my life. So I'll give you an introduction, see what you think. Let me know if you want to see more of Gabby, as I call her. Yeah, just give me a comment. Right then, the distraction part, the final bit. So the last few months have been nice and warm, and I've sort of switched fire with this. Instead of working on the van, I've decided to switch to my beloved Escort. Let me just flip around, and we have. So this is a 1978, originally a 1.6 gear automatic. So it's a 4-door Escort. Back in the day, it was a luxury small car. That's quite a new niche. And I've had this car for 27 years and I just absolutely love it. It's one of the few cars I think you'll ever meet, if that's the right phrase, that started off as a 3-speed and now has double the amount of gears. So this car originally, my friend found it in the mid-90s on someone's drive, covered in mould. He bought it off an elderly couple. I think they had it for a long time, and he bought it for £75. He fixed it. Essentially, they said that the gearbox had gone and it was actually an inhibitor switch, a simple £8 switch on the side of the gearbox, and he ran it around as a 1.6 auto. Back then, you know, when we were teenagers, we were all on Fiestas, funnily enough, just like that one, Mark 1s and Mark II Fiestas, 1.1 and 957cc. So something at 1.6 litres was like, wow, that was like the big boy back then. By the way, it's a V6 Fiesta. That's another story, another distraction. Back to this one, my Gabby, as she's called. So I've used this and not abused, I've always just properly used it and enjoyed it, done road trips, track days, sprint days. Drag racing, gone to Germany. It's so many memories tied up with this car. So I took it off the road 3 years ago to sort out the gearbox, actually. So I said it started off with a 3-speed automatic. I then, in around I think late 90s, I put a genuine RS 1800 gearbox, a 4-speed gearbox, and that's a super rare gearbox. Never seen one for sale. It's a 4-speed gearbox, very similar to the RS 2000 gearbox. Slightly stronger apparently, and a different first gear, but it was a fantastic gearbox. Changing gear was like cocking a rifle. It was like proper, you know, sweet action. Then 5-speed. 5-speed was from a Sierra V6, and that was okay. The 5-speed was much better for long journeys, but that started going. And this is now a Mazda RX-8 gearbox. There's a weird Ford Mazda partnership you might not be aware of, but Ford I think owned 49% of Mazda at one point, and strange engineering coincidence, this gearbox is the same. It's got many similarities in dimensions with the Ford 5-speeds. So I've fitted it to the original Kent engine. If you don't know much about these, they're probably best off. The most famous car that they're fitted to is probably, unfortunately, the Harry Potter Anglia, but they have the humble Ford Kent engine, designed in late 50s, I think 1959, has spawned so many engines, other engines, motorsport engines, like the Lotus Twin Cam, the Cosworth BDA, from that the FVA. So the BDA is well known, spawned a whole generation going up sort of BDEs, BDGs,
probably I'd say the most successful rally engine ever. They sound amazing, by the way, at full chat if you've not heard them. The FVA is not as well known. It's a Formula 2 engine. It had gear driven cams, and essentially based on the Kent block with a 16 valve head, Formula 2 engine. From memory, the 1.6 back in the day produced about 200 horsepower, and that was then used to develop the Ford Cosworth DFV, which is a V8 Formula 1 engine and is in history as the most successful Formula 1 engine ever made. So I think a really interesting history, and all coming back to that humble little Crossflow that powered that humdrum Ford Anglia that everyone used to own back in the day. There was a stage during the sort of 80s, 90s up to 2000 probably when there was no Formula 1 engine, so no Formula 1 driver that hadn't gone through Formula Ford. So they'd all have sort of learnt their craft in cars just powered by that humble Ford Kent engine. Companies like Lotus, Gilburn, TVR, oh god, there are so many owe their influence to and existence actually to this Ford Kent engine. So it's an old engine, totally obsolete. I'm going off on one. Sorry, I can talk about pushrod engines. There's nothing fancy about this, and it is a pushrod engine, overhead valves. This one you can probably see from the can cover, built by Vulcan Engineering. Now, if you know your Ford engines, you've probably heard of them. Steve at Vulcan is just basically a wizard. He's been building these for 4 decades, and his work is astonishing. I once had the great honour to build a Pinto under his supervision in his workshop, and he won't mind me saying this, he is not the cheapest, but the work and the attention to detail he puts into his engines is phenomenal. So the Kent engine, back in '59, I think they originally started off as 39 horsepower, and they were about 1.1. And by the time they got to the 70s, they'd switch from pre-Crossflow, where the intake and the exhaust was on one side, to what this is called a Crossflow Kent engine. So the intake is on this side, exhaust on that side. Basically, you didn't have the exhaust heating up the intake charge, and it was basically free power, if you like. Ford worked that out, and so this is from the 70s, a 1.6, and originally this would have been about 85 horsepower. This has got a lot of really good parts, Cosworth parts, etc., and you can see what I've got. So it's gone from 85 horsepower up to, and I've been working hard on the exhaust and intake system, but I always judge engines. I look quite a lot at the engine's performance figures. I always judge them by how much torque they produce per litre. And there's another measure of engine performance called brake mean effective pressure. If you get into it, I've got a table, Excel table of engines I look at. I'm always analysing engines. But anyway, the reason that's relevant is because Steve Curzon at Vulcan has managed to do a really good job with this. A good Crossflow back in the day used to make 130 horsepower, so this is 157. At full chat, it just sounds amazing. It does that with just plain and simple 2 valves per cylinder, forged pistons, really high compression ratio, lumpy cam. It was running, and it will be running twin Weber 45. It's just a brilliant thing. Now 157 isn't a huge amount of horsepower, I totally admit, but it's so much fun, so much fun. I've driven lots of fast cars. I've driven dual motor Teslas, which they're 0 to 60 in 2.9, and they are phenomenally fast, but they just leave me cold. There's nothing like a light car with a reasonable engine. The gearbox is an extra 15 kilograms on top of the previous 5-speed. So I'm putting Gabby on a diet. I've gone for alloy calipers. I used to have the old the cast iron Princess 4-pot calipers, which are good, but they're heavy. So I've gone upgraded alloy hubs, alloy calipers. These save me 3.7 kilograms per side. These look like the old Capri 2.8 Bilstein front legs, which is a very popular mod, but these are actually even older than that. These are World Cup struts, front struts from, they were an optional extra on that Escort Mexico. Really rare bit of kit. So I've only seen a set for sale once. And the other thing I've been doing the last few months instead of George is front end rebuild and rear suspension rebuild, and drums have been converted to rear discs. So that's, I know I haven't got any pads on, don't tell me, I know. So the Escort, this dear Gabby, has been taking up the last few months. So that's my distraction. I've run away with myself talking about pushrod engines and Cosworth history and superchargers and all the rest of it, and my Mark II Escort, obviously. Let me know if you want to see more of that. I'm doing the work anyway. As I said, life's busy, isn't it? I can only put sort of 1 or 2 hours a week sometimes. Probably like most of you, you're just shattered when you get back in the evening. But make sure you do put some, whatever you're into, make sure you put some time aside for yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you want to like, I'm definitely not going to beg you to subscribe. You like what you want to like, you subscribe to whatever you want to subscribe to. But the next episode, I'm really hoping you won't have to wait anywhere near as long. I've started putting it together already. It takes me ages to edit these episodes, but I'm enjoying it. So I hope you do too. Until next time, bye-bye.